I'm going to go ahead with the meeting beginning ritual. 起立，面向佛堂，参加先鞠躬，一鞠躬，再鞠躬，三鞠躬，参加各位的传世一鞠躬，开班一鞠躬，请坐下。
If you recall, last time I provided a high level on 74, breaking it down into 3 sections, where section 1 starts out with a question from Lao Tzu about the value of deterrence. In threatening people with death, well, that threat loses power when people don't fear death. And then Lao Tzu goes on to say, to describe the conventional thinking, which is that, well, if you capture and kill people who act in an unlawful fashion, then no one would dare, right? Then Lao Tzu goes into the final explanation here, which is using metaphors about the Tao works like a master executioner, so that if you are reckless, it is natural that the likelihood increases that you will be killed by the quote-unquote master executioner, which is actually the result of your own thoughtless, reckless actions. And if we try to take the place of the master executioner, it would be like we're trying to, as a novice, as an apprentice, we're trying to utilize the tools of the master carpenter, the great carpenter, to cut, and we end up hurting ourselves because we don't really know how to use the tools of the great carpenter or the Tao itself. So that last sentence there is what I want to focus on. The metaphor, this is our closing point for chapter 74. It's rare that they do not hurt their own hands, so I've taken that last line to be the title of my slides, and I want to go through this question one more time with everybody. So some people will read this chapter and conclude, when they have understood the message, they may conclude that, oh, so we should practice wu wei, to do nothing, and just let destination take its course, or in other words, let the master executioner execute. Let the great carpenter form and shape wood rather than we do it ourselves. So it seems to be advocating non-action. In reality, and this is where we need the greatest clarity to understand the point made by Lao Tzu, there's no doubt that Lao Tzu would like all of us to do less. And this is because human beings usually have a tendency to do too much, to interfere too much, and we don't know when to stop, and that's the reason why we hurt ourselves. However, notice that there's a definite difference between doing less and doing nothing. So doing less doesn't mean complete apathy or inaction or indifference. So when we come back to the Tao, it's all about moderation and balance. Now, this is no trivial matter. There's a whole bunch of people who are always going to be asking questions like, well, what should I do now according to the Tao? Should I help people, not help them, let nature take its course, let karma work its lessons, whatever those lessons are, which would suggest that I do nothing, or should I reach out a helping hand? What should I do? Well, it's about moderation and balance. And this happens to be tricky. There's nothing easy about this. The easy ones, the easy courses of action are the extremes. Go all out or refuse to lift a finger. Either extreme requires no thinking whatsoever. It doesn't require any thinking for you to go all out, to do whatever you want to do, to interfere to the maximum, to just recklessly engage yourself in any situation that you see out there, or let your whims dictate. Requires no thinking, requires no awareness, requires no observation. Or if you say, nope, I am detached from the world, I am completely unattached, so I'm not going to do anything, I'm a complete pacifist, that also requires no thinking. It requires following very simple simplistic rules. I will do nothing or I will do everything. It's the middle ground that requires work. The middle ground requires discernment. Middle ground requires wisdom. It's just like someone trying to balance himself or herself in a high wire act. That requires skill and requires practice to maintain equilibrium, maintain balance on the high wire. Requires understanding, requires skill to live life just right, strike the right balance, neither too much nor too little. Boy, that's not easy, but no one said that the Tao was easy. The Tao requires that you actively think about a situation, be mindfully aware, and choose the best possible action as dictated by your rational thinking mind plus your intuitive powers. Not easy at all. So Wu Wei never was doing nothing. It didn't mean that in the beginning. What it actually meant from the beginning was to let go of attachments, let go of agenda, specific purpose, so you can create the best effect with minimal effort or no effort at all. So you're thinking about the thought is not on achieving a specific result. The thought is on doing things right and doing the right thing. So that's what I mean by the Tao not being easy. It's the skill of living life, but that skill has to be learned and it has to be practiced. So there's no easy, quick answers for anyone to say, in that situation, you should do X, Y, Z. Rather, it has to be up to you to determine, according to the set of circumstances in which you find yourself, what the best course of action happens to be. And from the Tao perspective, you would also scale it back because realizing you have a tendency to do too much, you want to scale it back to say, what is the minimum that I can do to achieve a positive outcome for everybody? So that is the answer. And now I want to bring your attention to a couple of popular phrases in modern Mandarin and explain what they mean. So first, I have a slide here called Against the Tao. And we have an expression here of 4 characters, 锦上添花. So what does that mean? Well, we can break it down character by character. The first character, 锦, is colorful, decorative fabrics. And I have an example here in this picture. As you can see, there's already quite a bit of floral patterns on this particular fabric. This is a bedspread. And literally, the second character means up or over or on top, high. So on top. And then third character means to add. And the last character, hua, means flowers. So the way that we would translate this is that we will have to rearrange the characters to make it fit English grammar better, English syntax. So basically, the translation is add flowers on top of colorful fabrics. So sort of like, hey, this is not colorful enough. I'm going to add more flowers on top of it. And the idea is that you're doing something that is absolutely unnecessary. You're adding something good, flowers, on top of what is already good, something that's been decorated, something that's very colorful. So the actual meaning of all this is unnecessarily adding something positive when there is already enough or too much of it, of that something. So human beings have a tendency to do this, 锦上添花. What do I mean? So here's an example. Praising someone that everyone already puts on a pedestal. We see this happen in all kinds of different places. We see this happen in celebrity culture, where celebrities are the center of attention. They get heaps and heaps of adulation upon them, and then there's always more coming, oh, we just love you. We also see it on a smaller scale, like for instance in the typical workplace, there's always a tendency from some people to kiss up, to be quite frank, to be quite crude. And when they kiss up, they heap praise upon a higher up who's already receiving a lot of praise from everybody. So that would be an example of 锦上添花. This is what most people do, and this is against the Tao. So in the Tao Te Ching, in a chapter that's coming up, Lao Tzu makes the point that heavenly Tao, the Tao of nature, is a balancing mechanism. Whenever things get too hot, it's cooled down. Whenever things are too cold, like ice, it's melted to room temperature. So there's a certain balancing mechanism in nature. So heaven, the heavenly Tao, will always take away from that which is excessive and fill out that which is inadequate. That's how the balancing mechanism works. Human beings oftentimes are the opposite. When there's already someone receiving a lot of something, we somehow jump on the bandwagon and give them even more. Now, it could be positive or negative. We also have a tendency, human beings also have a tendency to, quote unquote, kick them when they're down. When somebody's down, already receiving a lot of criticism, that's when we pile on. That's when we join in and point the finger. Yeah, you were, awful, terrible, etc. You join your criticism among the many that's already there. So speaking of jumping on the bandwagon, sports fans, when you talk about bandwagoners, you all know what I mean by that. When you jump on the bandwagon to cheer for a team that is already on the path of victory, that is already incredibly dominant over other teams, that is usually a team that attracts even more fans. That is usually a team that sells the more merchandise of any teams out there. You see this in the NBA, you see this in the NFL, any sports leagues. It always happens like that. And that's because most people have the tendency to 锦上添花, to add to what is already enough or too much. And that's against the Tao. So when measuring your own actions, when thinking about whether or not you should get involved, that will be one of the yardsticks. Am I doing something that's already excessive? Am I adding to what's already too much? So if so, it will be against the Tao. I want to do the opposite. I want to be with the Tao. And there's the opposite expression in modern Mandarin, very common, 雪中送炭. So I'm going to break it down for you character by character as before. And if I point you to the painting, the Chinese painting in the lower right-hand corner, if you take a look, the characters are actually there. It's proceeding from right to left, whereas in this slide I'm writing from left to right. But those are the same characters. So it's depicting this man basically, using his carrying some logs to be burned for warmth, and he's walking through a snowfield to go to someone to provide them with the warmth-giving, life-saving logs so that he can warm them up. So if we break down the characters one at a time, the first character is snow. Second character means middle. And the third character means to deliver. And then the last character is coal. Coal for burning, for warmth. So again, we have to shuffle around the characters a little bit to make it syntactically fit the structure of English. When we do that, we get the translation, deliver coal in the middle of snow. So think about it, especially in something like a snowstorm where the temperature is extremely low, people are freezing. If you happen to know that your friends are all in the middle of heavy snow and they are freezing their butts off, and if you at that time were to deliver coal to them, so imagine the appreciation and gratitude. That is the metaphor for you being of assistance when someone really needs it. So the meaning is providing help when it is needed the most and will do the most good. 雪中送炭, to deliver snow in the middle of snow. Deliver coal in the middle of snow. Thank you. Yeah, delivering snow in the middle of snow. You could have a snow fight and build snowman and maybe a lot of fun, but it may not be the assistance that people who are freezing their buns off are looking for. So, example. So how do we use that in life? When Chinese people say 雪中送炭, they're talking about a situation when you observe something perceptibly, you notice something that someone is in a bad situation and people have turned away. Maybe it's a school situation and there is a kid that is either getting picked on or being ignored. And so no one wants to be this kid's friend, and you extend the hand of friendship. What's going on? You have delivered coal to provide the warmth of friendship when everyone else is giving that kid cold shoulders. It's a snowstorm of cold shoulders, so to speak. So, as Lao Tzu points out in the Tao Te Ching, most people tend toward 锦上添花, to add flowers on top of floral patterns, but Tao cultivators will always practice 雪中送炭. So this again requires work. It requires awareness. It requires noticing, requires observation and understanding from the Tao perspective to notice when someone really needs help and then deciding on the most appropriate form of that help. So, and I want to also be very specific that the metaphor is being used to deliver coal in the middle of snow is because, obviously in places in warm temperature, during summertime, there's not going to be snow. The metaphor is used to mean that when you are helping someone, it need not be a material nature. So just imagine a situation when someone is constantly coming up short on funds and talking about how, oh, I am desperate. My situation is so urgent. Nobody else will help me. I'm in the snowstorm. Everybody has turned the cold shoulder on me, etc. So can I borrow some money? Can you give me some coal? Okay, well, that's actually not fitting the situation. 雪中送炭. The idea is that the help you provide, if it is in accordance with the Tao, it will be a lasting kind of help. For someone who's chronically trying to borrow money from people and you provide the funds, that's actually not lasting help because next month comes around, a couple months from now, several months from now, that person is once again desperate. So if your help is not lasting, it's not in accordance with the Tao. You have to instead, if you can, maybe it's beyond help, but if you can identify the roots of the issue, perhaps it is because of, for instance, addiction to substance abuse, to gambling, that's causing this person to be unable to build a financial foundation. If so, that has to be addressed. So another possibility is the lack of knowledge or the lack of awareness of how to manage one's finance. Maybe someone is making money and pretty good money at that, but they're constantly spending. They're spending more than they're making, so it doesn't matter how much they make, they're still going to be short. So if that is the case, then having that person learn about managing personal finance would actually go a longer way, would actually be more effective than to lend them money when they need it, which is not a lasting solution. Okay, so with that, we have come to the very end of this particular chapter. I think I have painted this overall idea of the Tao that where we want to watch for excessive interference with what's going on. At the same time, we want to be very measured and very skillful in providing actions, words of encouragement, spiritual sustenance, spiritual help to other people at just the right moment so that they can get back on their own 2 feet. Okay, and that means we're now ready for the paraphrase. And again, the purpose of the paraphrase, as always, is to demonstrate that we do have that complete understanding of chapter 74, and we'll express that understanding in our own words. So here's the paraphrase for chapter 74. The first part, as you recall, has the threat of death as deterrence, and then the way that people usually think of it. So the paraphrase goes like this. Rulers who do not understand the Tao will often rule by fear. They threaten the people with death as the ultimate punishment for criminal acts. There's only one problem with this. What if people lose their fear of death? What will you do then? The ruling elite value their own lives and fear death, so they assume the same must be true for everyone. In a simplistic way, they imagine that if you capture and kill all criminals, then no one will dare to commit crimes. This fails to take the complexity of real life into account. Okay, so I want to echo what Bill is saying. Thanks everyone for sticking with us as we work through the many difficult challenges that we're encountering today. On chapter 74, when you live the good life, it's natural to assume that because you value the life that you live, that other people will value their lives just as much as you do. In reality, we find that this is usually not the case. When people are desperate enough, they will disregard the value of continuing on living. When they're angry enough, they won't think about it anymore. And when they are on a particular mission, perhaps a mission of vengeance, all thoughts of fearing death are cast aside. So there are many situations for which the threat of death will simply not work. All of that goes into the complexity of life. So then the second half. The second half about the master executioner and the great carpenter. Reality regulates itself, like a master executioner that kills those who should be killed. If we engage in killing ourselves, then we are basically trying to take the place of the executioner. It's like an inexperienced apprentice trying to use the tools of the great carpenter. You fumble around and cut your hand instead of the wood. Thus, when we endorse killing in the name of justice, we actually hurt ourselves more as a society. So wow, Lao Tzu comes out not in favor of capital punishment. As I mentioned at the very beginning of our discussion on this chapter today, this was shocking to me when I first encountered it, because at the time I was absolutely in favor of capital punishment. I felt that it was the deterrence. I felt that the deterrence of death should work. And now I realize that I thought so only because I value my own life. I was living the good life, and therefore assumed everybody else must also value their lives, not realizing the complexity of life itself. So for 74, here are the summary points that I'd like to ask everyone to consider. Should you get involved with a situation or join a particular cause? The real answer, the answer that I don't like but had to accept as being the true answer, is that it depends. It really depends. And there are three questions that you can ask. If you recall the story that I told last time, these questions are drawn from that story. So, and also the expression, are you adding to what is already a lot? Are you in effect, like the story, in the story the idea was that the wealthy man did not need the money. Are you in effect, 锦上添花, helping the wealthy man with money that he doesn't need? So number two, is there a risk of creating a dependency? If you help someone, it may be because you are very compassionate, but are you creating a recurring problem where this person feels like a victim and is constantly requiring additional attention and will take your help for granted, so that one day when you stop helping because it's a bottomless pit, this person actually will resent you. That's a possibility. You want to consider it. Number 3, is it a situation that will work itself out? Is it conflict that really needs to happen so people can just clear the air? Is it possible that your meddling will actually prolong the chaos and prevent things from settling down? A lot of times when we interfere too much, that's exactly the result that we obtain. Instead of resolution, we just prolong the agony. So
let's go ahead and do the meeting ending ritual, everybody. 起立，面向佛堂，持架3鞠躬，1鞠躬，再鞠躬，3鞠躬，持架跪滚11鞠躬，接班1鞠躬。Okay, everybody, we are done.